Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating phenomenon happening right now in the football world. We're going to look at the specific reasons, tactical, cultural, and even psychological, why Arsenal FC is suddenly facing a massive wave of dislike from neutrals and rival fans alike. I mean, if you spend any time online, you've definitely noticed it. But what's actually driving the hate?
So why does everyone suddenly want Arsenal to fail? For a long time, they really weren't the villains. Back in the Arsene Wenger days, they were actually viewed with this sort of sympathetic nostalgia. But today, under Mikel Arteta, they've kind of become public enemy number one. From mainstream pundits to international fan blogs, it literally feels like the entire global footballing community is actively rooting against them. To understand why, we've got to dig into the data, the media analysis, and the very real cultural shifts happening at the club.
All right, let's start with part one, the on-pitch dark arts.
Critics and rival managers are pointing to a really drastic shift in how Arsenal actually plays. Observers are experiencing some serious whiplash here. The Guardian pointed out that Wenger gave Arsenal an identity rooted in expressive, attacking football. A commitment to the beautiful game that pretty much everyone praised. But the Arteta era? Well, that's a highly pragmatic reality. It's built on rigid defensive structures and a huge reliance on set pieces. And hey, it wins games, absolutely. But it doesn't exactly thrill neutral fans who tune in expecting that free-flowing football of the past.
And this critique has blown up in the mainstream. Pundits like Jamie Carragher have really zeroed in on this stylistic shift. He argues that Arsenal basically pushes the boundaries in every single area to try and gain an edge. So it's not just about defending well anymore. It's about pushing the rules to the absolute limit. And that creates a deep, deep sense of frustration for opposing fans who feel like Arsenal is just constantly getting away with it. We're talking about tactics like literally packing 15 players into the 6-yard box on corners. Or Arteta spending way more time outside his technical area than in it, intensely screaming at the opposition. Throw in defenders going down super easily on minimal contact, and the goalkeeper systematically killing the clock to just ruin the game's momentum. These highly calculated physical maneuvers drive opponents crazy, and they completely solidify the narrative that Arsenal is out there bending the rules.
Moving on to part two, the establishment club.
Because, you see, beyond the pitch, there's this deep-seated cultural perception of Arsenal as the ultimate establishment club. As The Guardian notes, they carry some totally unique cultural baggage. For starters, they're openly supported by high-profile political figures like Prime Ministers Keir Starmer and Jeremy Corbyn. They're located in the affluent London borough of Islington, which is basically the stereotyped heartland of elite dinner parties. Combine that with the historic, almost pompous grandeur of Highbury's old marble halls, and rivals easily see them as self-important. And let's be real, when a perceived elite stumbles, it perfectly invites that anti-establishment schadenfreude. People just love watching the elite fail.
Next up, part three, the toxic fanbase effect.
Okay, so we can't just talk about tactics and history here. The modern Arsenal fanbase plays a massive role too. International sources are highlighting a highly toxic digital environment surrounding the club right now. For example, a prominent Thai football blogger talked about how simply stating he didn't like the manager led to an absolute barrage of vile personal abuse from fans telling him he had no right to even support the team. Add to that the club's own perceived arrogance, like prematurely announcing ticket sales for a Champions League round before they actually advanced, and it combines with this extreme online hostility to become a huge turnoff for any neutral observer.
Which brings us to part four, the psychology of hatred.
So how exactly do tactics and tribalism translate into the massive waves of digital hate we see every single weekend? Let's look at the actual science. An academic study analyzed over 62 million Reddit posts, grounding this subjective feeling of hate into hard, measurable data. And they found that match outcomes act as a direct causal pathway. Following a loss, or even just a draw, the sentiment score of the community absolutely plummets. Defeats literally plunge online discourse into measurable toxicity.
Tracking this data minute by minute reveals an exhausting emotional roller coaster. See that universal sentiment drop right at kickoff? That is pure anxiety setting in. But look at the trajectory when they lose. The negative reactions to poor performance are sustained, and they just compound over time. Whereas the positive spikes from a win fade away pretty fast. Because the stakes of Arsenal's recent title races are so incredibly high, the emotional swings of their fanbase are just absolutely massive.
So where does all that concentrated negativity actually go? Well, it spreads like wildfire. The researchers found that these digital spaces function as interconnected emotional ecosystems. The tribalism of sports literally triggers emotional contagion. When Arsenal loses, that negative sentiment directly correlates with a huge spike in toxic language. And incredibly, this hostile discourse spills over into totally non-football communities. Because Arsenal has such a massive, highly engaged digital fan base, their online explosions shift the mood of the entire internet. It practically invites rival fans to pile on and multiply the hate.
As we wrap up this explainer, we've got to ask one final, big question. Is Arsenal simply the villain of the moment just because they're finally winning again and challenging the status quo? Or are we actually witnessing the dark reality of how we consume sports today, where tactical pragmatism, historic privilege, and digital tribalism create the perfect storm for online hatred? It's probably a mix of both, but one thing is for sure, as long as Arsenal remains at the top, playing their dark arts and dominating the digital conversation, the world is going to be watching, and a whole lot of people will be waiting for them to fall. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.